In this morning's class, we were looking at Testimonies to the Church, Volume 1, page 300, paragraph 1. And what did we discuss in reference to that passage? So if someone can give me an overview of details about this passage. When was it written? What's it connected to? That type of thing. Shall we have a go? Let me just repeat that. So we started off by looking at law and good advice. Law is enforceable and good advice is not enforceable.
We say that both of them they are tied to the code of conduct. One of our sisters gave us a brief view, and by that she gave her evidence of false testimony.
So Sister Jackie took us in this discussion about advice and law to Testimonies of the Church, Volume 1, page 300, paragraph 1.
And in reading that, we found that Ellen White was talking. The subject was about civil war. The code was section 7 was not and the first of the idea of slavery. And we found that it was written in 1862. And what we are seeing was
We'll just stop there. So it was section 7 from Testimonies of the Church, Volume 1, and the subject is the North and the South, which is basically the Civil War. Civil War is to deal with the subject of slavery. And the last chapter in that section is the one that we're dealing with here. And it was written in 1862. It's in the midst of the Civil War, just before the Battle of Gettysburg.
in the leading sentence, Sister White begins by introducing that this is where we can find safety, and concluding that she introduced the scripture of 1 Thessalonians saying that many will be led into delusion.
Second. Yeah. So it begins by saying we only have safety in what? What's our safety in? You just said it a minute ago, just making sure that I would say it correctly.
If I'm to remember, he says 3 things, and one was about the Sabbath, the nature of man, and the other was Christ's testimony.
Good. So there's only safety if we look for the truth correctly, which means we persevere to understand this treasure. And then she tells you what the treasure is: the Sabbath, the nature of man, and the testimony of Jesus. These are the hidden treasures, or as she says, these are the important truths that we need to understand. And they will prove as an anchor for God's people in these perilous times. So what is the perilous times? If she talks about an anchor, what's that analogy? Perilous times would be what? To go from spiritual to natural. Sorry? You said? Storm, yeah? So the perilous times are a storm, and in this storm, this boat's going to be tossed around and taken off course. So we need an anchor to help it to remain fixed in place. So these truths will help us to remain fixed in these stormy times or these dangerous times. So the dangerous times, what are those dangerous times? Externally, the dangerous times are the Civil War, of course. But what dangerous times are they in? Jacob's time of trouble. The Laodicean condition. Both correct answers. What's about to happen in these perilous times? It's 1862. Second Advent. I think by now the Second Advent's probably not going to happen. They're going to be? They're going to be scattered. So there's these perilous times coming, they're going to be scattered. It's going to be strong delusion. So it's 1862 and they're going to have a general conference next year in 1863. And what's about to happen? Organisation. Positive. So they're going to reject the 25-20. Go ahead.
Okay, so in 1863, they are going to be encountered with anti-faith. They are not going to be able to send the message because they are going to take the message of time. So if they reject it, then they are going to go into a scattering time. So before they can enter into that time of scattering, they have to be firmly anchored.
So in 1863, Brother Benjamin, in 1863, what are they going to reject? Don't say the 25-20. What are they going to reject? Sorry? Two charts. Both answers are correct. They're going to reject the two charts. They're going to reject the 25-20. But that's not what the answer in this context that we're looking at. We already have the context. We've discussed the context. So I want to see if we can reason through about what they're actually rejecting. Remember, each angel's message comes in various shapes and sizes. So what are they rejecting? Which angel? Third angel? Time?
They're rejecting the 1850 that which is a condition of the time.
Third angel? Brother Rogers? Everyone's the right answer, but I want a specific one.
That's a prophetic message.
Which prophetic message are they rejecting? Empowerment of the third? 7 times. Christ. Health message. Time setting. So we're starting to get the same answers. So I'm going to say they rejected the first angel's message. Okay, so that's what I want. That's the answer I wanted. So now you tell me why I said that. Why do I want the first angel's message? They rejected the 25-20. What's the 25-20 got to do with first angel's message? Cleansing of the sanctuary.
They rejected the 1843 church because of publishment of the first angel's message. So in them rejecting that church means that they rejected that first angel.
So, 1843 chart. Is this the third angel's message? Yeah, no, it's not the third. There's no third on there. This is the first angel's message, And we would say that this is the vision of Habakkuk chapter 2. We could express it different ways. The vision of Habakkuk chapter 2 is what vision? 2520 or 2300? It's 2520 in real life. It really is a 2520. So this is the 2520. They're rejecting this. But all of this is their message. And their message is the first angel. That's what their message is. So this chart here builds upon that, and it goes from the first, explains the second, and takes you into the third. So what's different about this one? It has the third in there, takes you to the end of Revelation 14 and adds the sanctuary message in there. So I want to say that they are the perilous times that they're in, because they're already there now, aren't they? It's not like we're going to come into perilous times next year. They're already there. They've already made a decision about the 2520. It's already been rejected. It's just not been formalised yet. They haven't had the meeting to do that work. And that rejection is the first angel's message. Are we okay with that? Okay, so leave that thought. Now they're rejecting something. Now what are they rejecting?
The Millerites, they come to a point where they focus on the Sunday sacraments alone. And so, in the year around 1863, God is going to raise two messengers. He's going to bring the other component that now the church will reject, which is part, a component of the third angel's message.
All that's true, but I want us to think about this problem in a different way. They're rejecting the first angel's message. What else are they rejecting? Yes, but that's too... Not the third angel. Not the third angel. No, you can't reject the second angel, because the second angel is the statement that you rejected the first. Not the third. When did the third begin? 1044. What brings you to 1044? Option 1 is, we've said already, okay? So what else brings you there? What are they rejecting? Go ahead, yeah, take a guess. It's my sister. Okay. What else are they rejecting? Back here. No, someone said the second. The second angel is just a fact that you've rejected the first. It's cause and effect. Sabbath, not Sabbath. No. We read the quote before. Sorry? The midnight cry. So they've rejected the first angel's message and they've rejected the midnight cry message. The midnight cry message does what? Prepares you to enter into the most holy place. Yes? Let me just read something to you. We've got to be careful when we read. So don't take this too definitely. It's correct, but don't this is not the definitive proof. So this is from Early Writings 42. Early Writings 42. She writes this in 1849. We had a very interesting Sabbath. The Holy Ghost was poured out upon us, and I was taken off in the Spirit to the city of the living God. There I was shown that the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus relating to the shut door could not be separated. and at the time for the commandments of God to shine out with all their importance, and for God's people to be tried on the Sabbath truth, was when the door was open in the most holy place in the heavenly sanctuary where the ark was. Early Writings 42, paragraph 1, EW 42. So this is not the definitive definition of testimony of Jesus. She's using it in one specific context. The commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus relating to the shut door. What's the shut door? This one here, October 22nd, 1844. So you can use the testimony of Jesus and you can see that the subject comes here. In this context, she's talking about the testimony of Jesus with respect to the shut door, the work that he's doing in heaven. And what brings you to that place? For sure, the first angel's message brings you to October 22nd, 1844. Fear God, give him glory, for the hour of his judgment has come. What's that? What is this judgment? Not the third angel. What did you say, sorry? The first. Yes, the first angel, but will you tell me what this judgment is that the first angel refers to? So this is the investigative judgment. This is why there's no Sunday law test here. There's a difference between the first and the third. So the first angel will bring you to 44, and also the midnight cry. There's a spirit prophecy quote, we read it before, that the midnight cry was to bring you, to prepare you to enter into the most holy place. So the perilous times that they're about to enter into in 63 is a rejection of Millerite history. And it's symbolized by what? Symbolized by the 2520. So that 2520 is not just a number. It's the whole symbolization of the movement. That's what they're rejecting. This is why Ellen White says in Early Writing 74, nothing wrong with this chart, only the date, 43 goes to 44. So are we okay with the 2520 in that respect? Yeah? They've already done the dirty deed. 63 next year, they're just going to rubber stamp it. So we can trace back this story to October 1844, and who's the person that we would target? What's that person's name? Hiram Medicine. So we target Hiram Medicine here, and we can run Hiram Medicine through this history. 1844, Hiram Medicine. And we'll just jump to 56. In 56, Hiram Medicine is going to be used to do what? What's it going to be used to do? Explain? No, explain. To explain the Millerite history. Yes? His studies are obviously on the 2520. We know that, but we want to understand what is actually happening. We want to understand, I think in the press they call it, or in the media they call it the backstory. We should always look for the backstory. What's going on in the background, this theme. So he's going to explain the Millerite history. And the problem with his study is what? Why is he going to fail? His message is? Okay, that's why they're going to fail. Why is he failing? 1 second, sorry? Okay, but that's the explanation. What's the backstory? Why is he going to fail?
He has rejected Miller's 2520.
Because what is Miller's 2520?
The southern.
Millerite.
Okay, the Millerite.
So he's going to reject the Millerite history. At the same time, he's supposed to be confirming the Millerite history. His job is to confirm the Millerite history with a second witness. And instead of doing that, what does he do? He rejects, destroys the first witness and gives you the second witness. Isn't that what he's doing? He says, I'll give you the witness. And now we've only got one witness. So he's destroying his own, or he's destroying Miller's methodology. He needed Miller to give a second witness to prove what was going on. And with the testimony of two, a thing is established. If they were established in the Millerite history, things would have been different. But even the very person who God raised up to confirm the Millerite history is going to reject it. So you think about the consequences of that. He comes here at the beginning, and if you cut this line, where would he be coming? What waymark would that be? If you cut the line, what waymark would that? The beginning? Time of the end. And that's where you see him. He's raised up there. Who does he become a symbol of? First angel. If you can conceptualize it that way. So he's been raised up to explain what? What happens before the time of the end? Darkness. He's there to explain the darkness of the Millerite history. And what does he do? He ends up destroying his own message. Sound familiar? If Jesus had not intervened in the work of John, what would John have done? Destroyed his own message. Everything would have been destroyed if Jesus hadn't... Now let me reframe that. Not Jesus. If person X hadn't stopped John, helped him, corrected him. Who helped John to make sure he didn't destroy the movement? Who helped John to make sure he didn't destroy? Who? Christ? Herod. Herod helped him. Didn't he? If you want to make it worse, Herodias did. Salome did. They had a confederacy to help John not to destroy the whole movement. Sorry? How? Who said Herod? Just one person said? I thought I heard a couple of places. You said Herod? Okay, who said Herod? Okay, Brother Kuto. Why Herod?
Okay, it is because after imprisoning him, he could not have that, he could cut that interaction between him and the people. So, and that is when Christ entered to pick the work that John had started.
What is Jesus tempted to say when John's disciples come? To do what? To rebuke him and say what? Oh, ye of little faith. You've got no faith. You call yourself a prophet and look at your behaviour. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. You're supposed to be what? You're over 20. That's what Jesus is tempted to say. John would have wrecked and destroyed the message. Who helped him? Who was helping him destroy the message? His disciples. You see the same thing happening again. He has to be killed. We don't like saying that, but so we'll say he has to be laid to rest. It sounds nicer. He has to be made quiet because he's about to destroy everything. So, you can go into all the histories, see the same problem. What's Miller doing in the spring and summer of 44? He's out of control, destroying the message, telling people off needlessly. What are they doing in the spring and summer of 44? What subject do they want to address? Not time. Not the bridegroom. Sorry? You could speak loud. No. Who's Snow's friend? What's his message? The nature of man. So the nature of man, and what does Miller do? Not only rejects, he publicly rebukes him. He says, this has got nothing to do with what? With the first angel's message. It's got nothing to do with our message. This is a distraction. So, first angel's messenger has a lot of problems. God has to put them out of the way. So, the perilous times are coming. They're already here, in fact. They've already rejected the first angel's message. They've already rejected the midnight cry message. So we've discussed that. And now they're in the Laodicean condition, and they've rejected nature of man and the testimony of Jesus. We gave one example of how they rejected the testimony of Jesus. They rejected the shut door message. They've accepted the Sabbath. Satan's really happy. Why is he happy? Sister Emma, why is Satan happy? What have the Millerites become that he's so happy about? Don't say Laodicea. They've gone from the Millerites to which church? Which church? They're not apostate Protestantism. Sorry? Which kind of Adventist? Which kind of Adventist? Same kind you are. What kind of Adventist? Are they first day Adventists? They're Seventh day Adventists. Satan's really happy. Why is he happy that they're keeping Sabbath? Sorry? Why is he really happy? Oh, no, he's happy because they will do it properly. Why is he really happy? This is a repeat in history, isn't it? Who else kept Sabbath properly? Don't help her. The Jews, we've gone back to the same dynamic. They're keeping Sabbath really well. Satan is really happy, isn't he? Who wants to comment now? Who wants to comment? Someone was commenting. He's happy because if you keep the Sabbath without these two, it's meaningless. It's worse than meaningless. It's a death sentence. You can keep Sunday or Saturday. It doesn't matter which day it is. It's meaningless. And this is the trap that Adventism is in today. We call it the Laodicean condition.
I wanted to say that he is happy because he knows that they will go back to attack their foundations.
So these people are Bible-believing Christians, and they're the best kind. They're the best kind of Christians to have, the ones who believe the Bible, because they can trick you the most. And they're self-deceived the most. They don't have a fear about their own condition and about what's going to happen, because their focus is on Exodus chapter 20, 9 to 11. And they keep on remembering the same thing, verse 8. So, to fix the problem, you need the empowerment of that message, which means they're going to correct these two. This is the work of Jones and Wagner, to correct the nature of man and the testimony of Jesus. Ellen White's been trying to push this, but no one's listening to her. All they like to listen to and preach about is the Sabbath. Ellen White says it this way: they preach the law, the Sabbath, until their message was what? Dry as the hills of Gilboa. What happens on the hills of Gilboa? Sorry? The death of the royal family. So these people die and they're dry, no moisture. So you've got all these dead bodies with no moisture. What will end up happening? You have dry bones. What's the definition of dry bones? Dry bones equals what? iniquity, and hypocrisy. Verse. Sister Elizabeth, verse. Matthew. Don't My sister. Chapter? Sorry? 8. Who's helping you? Who's your co-labourer? Who's you in confederacy with? Sorry? Matthew 23:27. Is that the explanation or is that the parable? 27. Yes, you want 28 as well? So 27:28. Your dry bones tells you what bones mean. So Ezekiel chapter 37, symbol of whom? Us? Yeah? Are we in a good place or a bad place? In a bad place. We're full of iniquity and hypocrisy. That's the condition that we come out of. We're born from or created from that condition. Darkness. So we've spoken about, I read to you from Early Writings 42. Counsel to Writers and Editors. CW 151. CW 151. CW 151, paragraph 1. The work that the Lord has given us at this time is to present to the people the true light in regard to the testing questions of obedience and salvation. What are the issues? Obedience and salvation. Dash. The commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus. What does that dash mean? Who spoke? What did you say? Explanation. So, this is the true light of the testing questions. Testing questions are obedience and salvation. And the answer is, or the explanation is, the commandments of God, testimony of Jesus. Obedience, commandments. Salvation, testimony of Jesus. We okay with that? Testimony of Jesus is salvation. How are you saved? A few years ago we did some nice presentations which were about the process of salvation, and they ended up being termed the 7 steps of salvation. If you heard that coinage, that phrase, people did a number of studies. Nobody does those studies anymore, not sure why. They were good studies, there are charts on that, and it lists a reform line in those steps. And perhaps the 2 key ones are numbers 5 and 6. If you're okay with that, numbers 5 and 6, which is justification, sanctification. So justification is what? In the framework of what we've just read, what is justification? My sister? Conversion, you said? Conviction, not conviction. When you're justified, what condition do you find yourself in? I was lost and now, or testing questions of obedience and justification is salvation. When you're justified, are you not saved? You're baptized, you're born again, you enter into the kingdom of heaven. So that's when you're saved. Yes? So salvation is the testimony of Jesus. Salvation is justification by faith. Are we okay with that? Counsels on Health, 515, paragraph 1. CH. CH 515, paragraph 1. Because of the ever-increasing opportunities for ministering to the temporal needs of all classes. What's that? The temporal needs of all classes. Code word for? Sorry? Page CH 515, paragraph 1. 515. 515, paragraph 1. Because of the ever-increasing opportunities for ministering to the temporal needs of all classes. That's code word for what, Sister Schneider? Temporal needs of all classes. What's that? It's code word. For what? Don't know? So how would you find out? Tell us how you would find out. Don't look or anything, just tell us the steps you would take. What's the very first step you would take? If I just read that passage to you. I want you to tell me what temporal needs of all classes mean. I said it this way. It's code word for something. Code word means symbol, symbolic of something. I asked you what, you said, I don't know. I said, that's fair enough. How would you find out? You'd read it's midway into the sentence. I read the whole sentence. We could read the sentence before. Another way. The title. What's the title? What's the reference? What's the title? Not that title. I didn't give you that. I just gave you... I only go by what I gave you, not what you're looking on your phone. What did I give you? Give you all the clues that you need. You don't need to look. What clue did I give you? What's the reference I gave you? What book? Which is what book? What's the subject? Health. Temporal needs of all classes is what? Health. We have enough clues already in there. You okay with that? Good? Okay, so because of the increasing opportunities for ministering to the health of all people, what do we call that? What work? The medical missionary work. Because we have so much opportunity to do medical missionary work and everybody loves it, there is danger that this work will eclipse the message. Which work? The medical missionary work will eclipse, overshadow the message that God has given. What is eclipse? Now what story are we in? Eclipse. What story are we in when we talk about eclipse, Brother Andrew? I said story. That might confuse people. Model. That's easier. What model are we in? Eclipse. Gardening. Marriage. Geography. Which kind of geography? Earthly geography. You see eclipses on around us? Where'd you go to look for an eclipse? Okay, so second heaven, that's the geography. So how does an eclipse work? Normal eclipse. How many objects do you have? 2. Sun is covered by the moon, and the sun is glorious, and the moon is dark. So when the moon covers the sun, there's darkness. By the way, what's interesting is, when you see the relationship of the sun to the moon, from Earth, what's interesting about their relationship? In real life, if the sun is this big, how big is the moon? That big? Would that be an eclipse? No. Why does it look like an eclipse from Earth? Because if that's the sun and that's the moon and the Earth is here, When you look at these two, what do they look like when you see them? They look the same size. So if they didn't look the same size, we would never have eclipses. They would never eclipse the glory of the sun. So, which is bigger? Glory or darkness? Which is bigger? It's a lot bigger. It's millions of times bigger. Who's stronger, Jesus or Satan? From our perspective on earth, what do they look like? They look the same. They look the same size. Darkness looks the same size as glory or light, doesn't it? One moment. Who's the most powerful nation in the world? USA. Who's the second most powerful nation in the world? Russia. So what you've done is you've taken the king of the north and the king of the south and you've made them the same size. But the king of the north is this big, king of the north, and the king of the south is how big? It's like this. Why did you not say Italy? Who's bigger, Italy or Russia? They're the same. Who's bigger, California or Russia? California is a lot bigger. Talking about money, GDP, not size or people. California is the fourth richest country in the world. The fourth richest. Think about that. We already discussed that. What is the United States? Is it a country or lots of countries come together in a federation? Yep. So just the reason I like that about the eclipse is that we make the problem bigger than it is and we look at the glory and make it smaller than it is. And if we just remain focused, we'd see how great God is and how insignificant Satan is. He has no chance to win, and yet we make him such a powerful person. America could annihilate Russia without any problem. It's like fighting with Italy. Or, I've not got a problem with Italy. I only say that because people think, Italy is one of those southern European countries, and it's not like France or Germany, one of those powerful industrial engine type countries, or Norway or Switzerland. That's the economic positioning of Russia. They have no power. They're bankrupt, and yet they project themselves. That's what happens. Nothing to do with our study. That's eclipse. The message that God has given, we didn't even read this one. There is danger that this work will eclipse the message that God has given us to bear for every city. This is the message: the proclamation of the soon coming of Christ, the necessity of obedience to the commandments of God, and the testimony of Jesus. What does that sound like? Third angel's message. Okay, this one, the proclamation of the soon coming of Christ. What message is that one? Someone said? Which angel? First angel. Yes? Good. That's the first angel's message, the proclamation of the soon coming of Christ. We didn't actually have that here. We should have done it. The primary definition of the first angel, besides the words of verse 6 and 7. Fear God, give him glory, for the hour of his judgment has come. The primary definition of the first angel's message is the announcement of the soon coming of Christ. Do you agree with that? Yes? This context, the proclamation of the soon coming of Christ, what message is that? Which message? My sister? Which message? 1, 2, or 3? 3. This is the third angel's message. The first angel's message announces his soon coming, and so does the third. They're the same. Revelation 14 verse 12 says what? Here is, what are they being patient about? The soon coming of Christ. Picks up from verse 13 onwards. When he comes, what will he come with? His reward. He says, my reward is with me. The proclamation of the soon coming of Christ, the good news that he's coming, is the third angel's message, part 1. The necessity of obedience to the commandments of God, part 2. Keep the commandments of God or get the mark of the beast. The testimony of Jesus, there it is again. So this is a definition for the third angel's message. What did we have here? This one. First Testament Church, Volume 1. We have Sabbath, nature of man, testimony of Jesus. Here it's slightly different. Proclamation of the soon coming of Christ, necessity of obedience to the commandments of God, and the testimony of Jesus. Go back to... No, we'll do this one. Testimony of Jesus lines up. We agree with that? Then it says, obedience to commandments of God. What's that one? Sabbath. So the other one says, nature of man. What does it say here? What does it say here? What's the nature of man one? Testimony of Jesus is testimony of Jesus. They're the same. Testimony and testimony is the same. Obedience is Sabbath. The proclamation of the soon coming of Christ is the study on the nature of man. If you're going to proof text those two things together, if we were willing to do that. Counsels and Diets of Food, page 75, paragraph 1. CD 75.1. The health reform is as closely related to the third angel's message as the arm to the body, but the arm cannot take the place of the body. Why does she keep on going on about this issue? Why does she say the arm cannot take the place of the body? Is she trying to teach us anatomy? No, we know anatomy. She's going to show us anatomy to make the point of what? What point does she want to make? Not the nature of man. We keep on doing this. Paragraph before we read, there is danger that this work will eclipse the message God has given to us. The message God has given to us is not the medical missionary work. It's not the health reform message. That is not our message. People don't like to hear that. It becomes difficult for them to swallow it because they invest all their life and their energy into that project. It's not to eclipse the message that God has given to us. Just like the arm cannot take the place of the body. Now, Elder Tess asked a question the other day about the sexuality of women. Are women attracted to men's bodies? And no sister wanted to venture and answer yes. But what do men know? Men know this. Can the arm take the place of the body? Yes. They wear t-shirts, roll up their sleeves, so the women can see what? Can see their arms, takes the place of the body. Forget everything else, just look at the arm. So, we fall into this trap all the time. Keep on looking at the arms. We keep on looking at the arms. What verse is that when you keep on looking at the arms? Daniel 11. Arms still stand on his part. Yeah? Just keep on looking at the arm and you forget the body that's behind it. Okay, so this is the message. The proclamation of the third angel's message, the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus. This is the burden of our work. The message that we proclaimed with a loud cry is to go to the world. Presentation of health principles must be united with this message, but must not in any case be independent of it or in any way take its place. Who's she accusing there? Who? Who wants to be independent and take over? What's his name? Kellogg. Kellogg wants to take over. If you can't take over, what does he say? What does he say about his institutions? He says, these sanitariums are not denominational. You've read that? If you're a medical missionary, you should have read that. And Ellen White says what? They certainly are. Without the denomination, you don't even have a sanitarium, because everything that you know, you got from us. So you can't have it independent, and it won't take the place, because he wants to control and destroy the church and make it, I don't know what he wants to make it into. So here she explains it differently. Third angel's message, commandments of God, testimony of Jesus. So, if you're okay with that, if you go back to this story, what is the nature of man now? It says the proclamation of the third angel, because we've dealt with the testimony, the commandments of God is the Sabbath, all that's left is the nature of man, and she says it's the third angel's message. So we've got the proclamation of the soon coming of Christ, the proclamation of the third angel's message. This is what the nature of man is about. This is why it's so important. Are we okay with that? Okay. We've discussed 1863. 1863, what's going to happen? They're going to reject two things. What? First angel's message, the midnight cry. And then Ellen White's going to give them the premier, it's not the first, it's the premier major health reform message. Why would they reject that? Why would they reject that message? Anyone else? Because they don't understand the nature of man. They don't understand the nature of man. That's why they're going to reject this message. If we could hold on to that thought. Okay? So we're going to finish this up now. So this is an introductory study. It's not concluded. We haven't come to a conclusion yet. It's an introductory study on the subject of those four vows.
Sorry, can you just clarify why they reject the midnight cry?
Because they reject the 2520. In 63, they reject the 2520. The 2520 is the symbol of Millerite history. It brings you to 1798 and 1844, just at that really basic, simple level. It's the vision. So just from the structure, you agree with that? Yeah? Miller focuses on one. Hiram Medicine was supposed to give a second testimony to confirm the second, which would be 1798. They would have had a unified message. And once they had understood what the Millerite message was about, then they could have understood the third angel's message. They'd understood properly the first angel's message, what it was designed to do. But Hiram Medicine is going to reject Miller's version, and therefore, at the time that he's raised up to fix the problem, he actually makes the problem worse, and he becomes the agent of death.
So he rejects 1798, which is
No, he rejects 1844. Hiram Medicine rejects 1844, because he says it's two 1260s. 723, 538, 1798. That's Hiram Medicine's one. William Miller's one is 677. I'll say there's nothing in between, which is not 100% accurate, and then 1844. So they've got two different stories. And he says that story doesn't even work, the maths aren't right. Scattering and gathering, it doesn't work. Two 1260s are all neat and tidy.
Well, he does that because he rejects October 22nd.
It doesn't matter whether he rejects October 22nd or not. It doesn't matter that I'm suggesting you can hold on to stuff. So have you rejected the third angel's message? No, the major visible component of the third angel's message is the Sabbath. You can hold that, promote it, glorify it, publish it, write books about it. It doesn't help.
So that's what I'm saying with this story. We can't explain it like they've rejected that whole experience of the Millerites, because they don't reject all of it.
No, it's not open-faced, shame-faced rejection. It doesn't work that way. This is the underlying story. If we don't see those stories, we don't understand what's happened. If you don't understand the story, we're going to think that the Laodicean condition is people being horrible to each other because we don't have the Holy Spirit. And we know that's a really childish version of what the Laodicean condition is. It's much more subtle, much more dangerous, much more ugly. But it's not a story you can read a statement about. Is that okay? The straight Ellen White quote, it says, the midnight cry was designed to prepare you to enter into the most holy. So entering into the most holy place is not this mechanical October 22nd stuff that we do. If you're going to enter into the most holy place, early writings 55, he says do what? Because now you're going to tarry. The tarrying time begins when? October 22nd, 1843. No, sorry. 23rd of October, the next day, 23rd of October, 1844. That's when the tarrying time begins. Agree with that? And what are you supposed to do when you tarry? Keep your garments white. So they're already white, and now you have to keep them white. You can't keep them white unless you know how to keep them white. You need to have knowledge on how to wash and how to keep clean. So entering into the most holy place is not an intellectual assent to the truth. It's not a numbers game. It's not just working the maths of 814 out, which is what we do with these charts. If you enter in, you have to enter in properly. And to do that, you need to know all of these three things. So they've rejected the midnight cry message. No, I don't think the midnight cry is the third angel's message. It's designed to prepare you for that coming message. It hasn't come. It's to prepare you for it.
But you say it's prepared to keep the garments white, which is nature of man. That's what I'm actually explaining. One place it said, how do you show that
You just do a quote on it. The quote says, the third angel's message was to prepare you to enter into the most holy place. So you launch off that quote. Yes. Are they in the most holy place experience here? No, they're not. So they've rejected the purpose of the midnight cry message. Adventists would argue, of course they're in the most holy experience here, because they accepted the shut and open door message. But they haven't really entered into that. Is that... what was the point I was going to say? I've forgotten. Someone can remind me.
You are saying the study is an introduction.
Oh, okay, yes. So let me see if I can remember my thought. So these are the introductory studies. So 2 years ago, 2017, September to, I'll say November, it's around 65 presentations, that kind of number. We did a study on the nature of man. Became so significant we had to give it a separate vow. We had 25 vows before that, and this was the 26th vow. Its placement in the vows themselves is number 12. It's number 12 vow, but it was added after this. I'm saying around the beginning of 2018, after that School of the Prophets. So, the nature of man. Two key chapters. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and Romans chapter 6. You need to know what those two chapters are about in order to understand the relevancy of this. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 is what subject? Okay, so this, I'm going to put literal. This is the literal resurrection. Everyone okay with that? If you check the story, that's what this chapter is about. For him to talk about that, what do you know? What do you know that's going on in that history? There's an argument. There's an argument about the resurrection. These Corinthian people, are they good or bad? It depends. The whistleblower is good. Everyone else is pretty much bad. They're so bad, how does he have to talk to them? As though they're carnally minded. Isn't that what he says? I speak to you as though you're carnal, which is not good. Literal resurrection. Romans chapter 6. What's the subject? Baptism. Yes? So, baptism is symbolic resurrection. Are we okay with that? Anybody doesn't understand that, what I've just done? Gone to 2 chapters. 1 Corinthians 15 actually talks about the literal resurrection. Tells you about the body that you're going to have. It's different. It's literal. Romans 6 is talking about the symbolic resurrection. When is the book of Romans written? Not the year. Where is Paul? He's in Corinth. He's here in this place writing about this subject. If we're okay with that. So they're tightly connected books, Corinthians and Romans. He actually writes the book of Romans while he's at Corinth. So they're connected thoughts. Are we okay with that? Literal and spiritual. So I want to add to that now. I'm going to erase that if we're okay. Are we familiar with progression and repeat and enlarge? Familiar with that concept? You have to deal with both issues at the same time. Yes? So another one that we have to deal with in 2 different ways is this one. The increase of knowledge is a waymark, but it's also a progressive increase. You okay with that? Increase of knowledge. Then there's another one. Sanctification. What does sanctification look like? Let me ask a different question. How many ways can you see sanctification? How many perspectives will it have? Remember, my question can't be random. How many? Why are we not all shouting out 2? My methodology is not that complicated. I just said increase of knowledge 2 ways, didn't I? Get another example, which was when you see a line, you have to understand it in how many ways? 2 ways. The 2 ways are progression, repeat and enlarge. 2 ways, increase of knowledge 2 ways. So when I say sanctification, you should all shout 2 ways. Yes? Okay. Way number 1. Any improvement? Constant. That's way number 1. Way number 2. Improvement. Yes. You can see the improvement here. And it began as a dot. 2 different ways of looking sanctification. Which is the most natural one? It depends. Depends on what your story is. If you take living creatures, which is the most natural one, what do living creatures do? They grow. So this is one for the living, and therefore this is one for the for the inanimate ones, the ones that don't have any life, objects. We'll call it object. That would be easy. We okay with that? So, if we're going to do a study on the pot, or this whiteboard, what's this whiteboard for? Drawing cartoons? Doing noughts and crosses? Saying games? Bingo? What's its purpose? Why did we buy this? Writing what? Writing the message. So we bought this board for holy use, didn't we? Yeah? And did the board grow, shrink, change? Nothing, no change. So the board was set apart for holy use here, and it was holy. 100% completely holy, and it never changes. Always set apart. The board didn't say one day, oh, I wish I could do something else. Didn't do it. It just stays the same. The other one is something that lives. A child goes from childhood to youth to adulthood. So we can understand that. Yes? Two different ways to understand this. So when we think about these resurrections, I want us to think about this. Glory. So is glory constant? Yes or no? Yes, glory is constant if it's this model. Will glory increase if it's this model? Yes. So you have to factor both in, depending on the point you want to make. As a Christian, can you become a better Christian? If you're Christ, can you become a better Christ? What does Christian mean? Christ-like. So if you're a disciple, can you become more of a disciple or less of a disciple? If you're married, can you become more married or less married? No. You're either married or you're not. It's a switch. So there are some things that are not changeable, and there are some things that you can have a marriage that gets better, which is this one. It's a living marriage. Or you can say marriage is a contract that you're either married or you're single, married or divorced. It never changes. If you commit adultery, you're still married. My sister, if you commit adultery, you're still married. Yes or no? Yes? Who disagrees with her? Are you married, my brother? If you're not, are you married if you commit adultery? You're not sure?
I can marry, but if I'm ready to marry.
Sorry?
I can marry if they are constant, they will allow me to get married.
Yeah, but you're already married and you commit adultery, you're still married.
No.
It depends. What does it depend on? How many times you commit the adultery? How long you do it for? Say you did it once, or then you say, I did it once every day for 5 years. If your spouse can tolerate your adultery, I don't know if you're blessed or cursed with that partner. If they accept it, then what? You still married?
I think that nothing changed. Well, that
1 second. I thought your argument was, if your spouse says we're still married, we're still married. And you want to back away from that? Depends on the concept. In the eyes of the law, the government, are you still married if you commit adultery? You're not? Okay. In the eyes of the government, you sleep together. Are you married? How do you get married? You have to go to a judge, not literally, we might call it a magistrate or a registrar, a judge, an officer of the government, and what do they have to do? Sign. That's what marriage is, isn't it? That's how you get into marriage. How do you get out of marriage? You go to the same person and you sign that document. In the other part, say not married. Yeah? So the marriage is the signature. It's not how many times you sleep with someone. Okay? Someone said something here? Sister Dorcas, you said?
I was just asking a question. What is the, why is that person committing adultery? What is the reason?
She's fed up with her husband.
Then you better stop marrying and go away.
That's fine, but he's rich and she likes his money, or she's comfortable, or they've got children and she doesn't want to hurt the children. Lots of good reasons to commit adultery. Protect the children. I don't know why she wants to stay, but she did. The question is, will she still be married if she stays? You think? Is she still married if she continues to commit adultery? She's having an affair.
But she's still at home.
Yeah, still at home.
I don't think she's
You don't think that's marriage? My brother?
I think it's still a marriage because if you're still in your house with your husband and you commit adultery, I think that nothing will change. Unless you go to the court so that you can get divorced.
What creates marriage is a legal document, whether it's verbal. So I don't know if Isaac and Rebecca signed anything, but different cultures do it different ways. Some might cut the wrists and you put your blood together. There's lots of different ways to do it. But you have to sign, you have to do some ceremony to have the marriage and to annul the marriage. The only other one is death, because they can't sign it. So marriage can be understood two different ways. So we've got glory. So my question was, can you be more of a Christian? No. Can you be more married? No. And therefore you can't be less married. That's the point I wanted to say. If you can't be more married, you can't be less married. You're either married or you're not. You can have a rubbish marriage, like 99% of all marriages are no good. The people are not happy. You can have that, but you're still married. They're not the same thing. So, glory to glory. So, I'm going to call this glory number 2. Should have done this the other way around. If you're taking notes and you haven't done them yet, swap these around. It's better to do it the other way around. Glory 1. First glory, second glory. So, glory 1 is symbolic and glory 2 is literal. So, when the Bible says from glory to glory, it's not just talking about 2, it's talking about many steps. I understand that. But I just want to see it in 2 steps. Glory 1 is where? Where is this glory 1? Romans 6 is what subject? Baptism. So you get glory 1 at baptism. What happens at baptism? The argument that Jesus has with Nicodemus. John chapter 3. How can a person be born again? Symbolically. Does he believe that? Does he have a problem with being born again symbolically? Does he have a problem with that? Who says yes? Who says no? And the rest of you don't know. 60 people that don't know. Sister Snyder. Does Nicodemus have a problem with symbolic births? I'll give you 3 choices. Yes, no, or yes and no. Which one? The answer is yes, no, or yes and no. 1, 2, or 3? 3. Yes or no. If they're Gentiles, he believes in that.
That one was not an answer. She said 1.
Oh, did I do it the wrong way around?
Yeah.
I said yes, he has a problem. No, he doesn't have a problem. Or yes and no.
Yes. 1.
She said yes. Yeah, I'm saying the answer is yes and no. Number 3. If it's a Gentile, yeah, he believes in it, no problem. Sorry, if they're Gentile, no problem, they'd be born again symbolically. But if it's a Jew, a Hebrew, then what? Then he has a problem, then it doesn't work. Okay, so we understand, which is the question why people can't understand why we need to be rebaptized. So how can I've already been baptized once, how can I be re-baptized again? Similar problem to Nicodemus, because we think we're arrived because we're God's people. So if it's a Jew, you can't be born again because you never died. And if you're a Gentile, you certainly have to be born again because you're dead. Agree with that? All symbolically. Symbolic resurrection, glory 1. This is baptism. And this is a new heart. Literal resurrection, glory 2 is what? What's that? New body. New heart. Everyone fine with that? So what did this person look like when he's got his new body? What did he have? He already had a new heart. So we're going to take this study, the nature of man, and we're going to break it into 2 parts. Part 1 and part 2. What's our first study we're going to do? What are we going to study first? Glory 1. So, glory 1, we're going to look at the heart. Everyone okay with that? The heart, this is the willpower, lower powers, higher powers, the nature of the will, all the internal mechanisms of the human body. As I said, we did about 70 to 80 hours of this. There's a lot of material on this subject, and we only scratched the surface of it. And this had a big influence upon the movement's perspective of what was right and wrong with the subject or the issue of sin. And it became so convincing, like whom? Who is the really convincing person? What's his name? What's his name, that convincing fella? Mr. Betterton. Remember Mr. Betterton? He spoke so enthusiastically about this, everybody said, this is great study. Now we fully understand what? The nature of man. We understand the nature of man. It's all good. What did they forget? What did they forget? This is only half the study. They forgot the other half of the study. When you deal with the nature of man, you have to deal with the human body as well as the heart. I've done it in different ways. Symbolic resurrection, literal resurrection. Glory 1, glory 2. This one is the heart. This one is the body. We okay with that? In this study here, study 1 that's been done, that's what we're focused on. Who controls everything? Who controls everything? My sister? The will. So, right here, the thing that's on the inside controls everything. Who does the inside control? What does it control? The inner person controls. The lower powers is inside. What's the inside controlling? The body. The inside is controlling the outside. Everybody thinks that is the culmination of this study. All done, all finished, easy. But that's only half the study. Now what we need to do is scrap that, forget you ever studied that, and now what we'd have to do? Do a study on which subject? The nature of man, and we're going to do this one, Glory 2, which will be a study on what? On the body. When you do the study on the body, what's controlling what? Sister Jackie, who's going to control whom? We just use inner person, outer person. That was this one. The inner controls the outer when you do this study. This one. The outer will control the inner. This physical body controls you. And science is only beginning to catch up on this issue. So, if the body is going to control you, if you have a bad body, what do you have? You have a bad you. You are bad because you've got a bad body. Or I think someone just said you have a bad mind. So when we start dealing with that issue, and we start dealing with the 4 vowels, what are those 4 vowels dealing with? Study 1 or study 2? Study 2. 26 vowels. 4 of them are dealing with one subject. The other 22 are dealing with what subject? The inner. So 22 vowels are on this level, and that's what's important. Did your mind control your body to bring you here? Yeah, your mind said, body, bring me here. And your body obeyed, didn't it? Yes. Why did you come here? Because of those 22 vowels. The message brought you here. So now we're going to deal with this one, which is the body will control the inner person. The mind, the heart, higher powers, lower powers. The body controls it in a most profound and powerful way. And you really have to do these 2 studies separately. You can find so many quotes for study 1, can't you? All about the mind. There's 2 books on it. They're called Mind, Character and Personality. All dealing with this. Then you have how many books dealing with this subject? Medical missionary work. Counsel on Diets and Foods. Counsel on Health. Ministry of Healing. Goes on and on. All with the outer body and the effects that it has. So as we start dealing with these vowels, and we start talking about this is good advice as opposed to law, even if that were true, even if it were true that it was good advice and we were correct, what is that telling you? Because all that good advice for those vowels are all addressing this body, aren't they? And this body is controlling what? Your mind. And if your body is bad, your mind will be bad. So those 4 vowels begin to take on a preeminence or an importance that goes beyond what many people might think. So people have a problem where it says, it doesn't say it this way, it doesn't say it in this harshness or this exactness, don't eat eggs, full stop. And people say, well, what's wrong with eating an egg once in a while? It's good for you. It's got vitamin B12 in it. It will help me. It's natural. I can assure you there's nothing natural about eating eggs. There's nothing natural about that. Do you know where an egg comes from? It comes from a chicken's backside. And we think that's edible material. If you think about that. And yet, what we would balk at is to take that egg, grind it up, and extract some chemical from it. We call it B12. And eat the chemical. We say, oh, that's not natural. So, what we think is natural, we need to be careful about, because we create natural and synthetic models or ideas in the imagination of our own minds and hearts. This is not a discussion, a health discussion about eggs and the rights and wrongs of them. It's not a discussion about veganism. But all I'm saying is some of the models that we have, we need to be really thinking about them, because none of us are vegans, are we? Well, I don't know you all well, but mostly none of us are, because we all eat honey, and honey's not a vegan product. So this is not a health education class, not discussing the rights and wrongs of honey eating, but I just want to make the point where people say, what's What's wrong with eating eggs? Because it's a natural source of B12. It is not natural for a human being to eat something that comes out of the backside of a chicken. It's not normal. It really is not. Because if it was a dog, and we said, eat that which comes out of the dog, we would say, that is sick. It's only because you have been acclimatized through custom and tradition that chickens, things that come out of chickens are okay. Things that come out of dogs are not okay. It's just about what you're getting used to. So I want us to really think about that. So those 4 vows affect the body, and the body affects the heart or the mind or the inner person. And this study has not been done in the movement. When we start thinking about habits, addictions, why we do things, all of those things are driven here at a chemical, biochemical level. So if your gut flora is not working properly, they know it can excrete chemicals that can damage your brain. I don't mean permanently per se, it may do, but it can give you a headache, it can make you hazy and blurry and not think straight. It can cause huge problems. It can damage your arterial system. The byproducts of the digestive work that happens in your intestines can produce chemicals that actually damage the arterial lining. So we know, and if your arterial lining is damaged, your blood's not flowing properly, it affects you spiritually. It's an extremely important area of study, this is, and we haven't done it properly in our movement. We haven't been rigorous about it, and because of that, we have now got to those vows, and we've just said we know how to deal with those vows because we've got methodology. And I would beg to differ with the people who think they've got methodology and they've understood how to deal with the vows, those 4 vows. Because I would suggest we haven't even looked at the methodology yet, we haven't even approached that study, because we've only done half of the study so far. And this is not a complete study on the nature of man. This is a complete study on the nature of man when that's done. And it gets to this point where I wonder if I should say something or I shouldn't say something. So we'll pray, switch the camera off, and they're all going to miss out. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness and mercy. We ask and pray that you would guide us and direct us in this important study, this introductory thought about the importance of the nature of man, what we have not yet accomplished, and the significant part that that plays in the establishment of the vows that you have given to us. We pray that you would guide us and direct us and bless us. In Jesus' name, amen.